Hi, everyone. I just want to go through the first two chapters of The Giver just so that everybody's clear about what's going on and that nobody feels confused. We start and we are introduced to our main character. His name is Jonas. And the first feeling that Jonas has is being frightened, which is kind of not great for us because, we want to feel positive when we begin a book. Why is he frightened? Because he sees an overhead plane going through the sky. And he's never seen an airplane so close because there's a rule in this community where he lives that pilots aren't supposed to fly over the community. So they describe the plane, and he feels very alarmed because this is something that's not the norm. Okay. Um, then 1 second. For some reason, it skipped. And then all the citizens are ordered to go to the nearest building and stay there immediately. So they feel even more alarmed. He drops his bike and he immediately goes to back to his family's home. And he leaves his bicycle. And he notices that nobody's out and about. It's very interesting. We've got people who work in this community and they all have names like street cleaner, landscape worker, food delivery people, and it's in capital letters. This community seems to be very organized. There are lots of rules. And so he feels very frightened because something that's happened that's not the norm. And then that's it. Nothing else goes on. The voice reassures them that it was just a pilot in training. He'd misread his navigational instructions and made a wrong turn. Okay, and then there's a voice that's needless to say he will be released. Remember, we talked about what it means to be released, and we don't really know what released means, but it's kind of something not very pleasant. The kids tease each other if they annoy each other. One of them says, "That's it, you're released." Okay, so that's a kind of punishment. But when we think about the word release, we think about the shachrar, like that's nice, isn't it, to be released? And we'll see this again and again. This idea that we have words that are being used that don't really tell us what the truth is. That words are used to disguise the truth rather than actually tell us the truth. Okay, so then we are introduced to Jonas's friend Asher, who's very disorganized and he's always late and he always has to make apologies. But it's very interesting when he goes into his class, he has to make this official apology for being late, and the class all say together, "We accept your apology, Asher." And the instructor says, "I accept your apology." It's very formal. This is not the way we used to having things in our school and in our lives. Okay. And then we have this idea that he is going to soon become a 12, that December's coming up, and that Jonas is going to be a 12. And being a 12 is something very, very important. And Jonas is trying to figure out what his feelings are, and he comes to the conclusion that he feels apprehensive, which means he feels a little bit nervous about what's going to happen. Then with the next scene, we have Jonas with his family after a meal, and they have this ritual where they all talk about their feelings, right? And they all take it in turns to talk about their day and about their feelings. Again, this is rather strange that there's a special time in a special place when everybody talks about feelings. And Jonas is a bit reluctant to talk about his feelings because his feelings are quite complicated at the moment. Because as you grow up, your feelings do become complicated, right? You don't just have one feeling at a time. You can have three different feelings at a time, or the feelings can contradict each other. So Lily talks about feeling angry because there was a group who didn't obey the rules. Remember, we have this mention of rules. We had the mention of rules with the pilot who flew in who wasn't obeying the rules, and you have all these things that. Anyway, so she has somebody who they took the slide and they didn't obey the rules. And then she says, says they behaved like animals, which is really weird because they don't have animals in their community. They don't know what the word actually means, but they use it to describe someone uneducated or clumsy. Okay, let's recap. We live in a community where there are lots of rules. We live in a community where people have to discuss their feelings at certain times. We live in a community where there are no animals, and we live in a community where something happens to people. We don't exactly know what it means, but they get released, and it being released isn't such a good thing. Okay, so we don't know where the visitors came from. They talked about the visitors a little bit, and then they talked about how this was when they were sixes, comparing it to another time. This okay. So what else? All right. So Jonas smiles at his sister because her feelings are straightforward, always straightforward, fairly simple, usually easy to resolve. And he guessed that his own had been two when he was 7, but now he is coming of age. There are lots and lots and lots of books that are written that surround a child who is coming of age, this age of 12, 13. This is when children start to look at the world differently and realize that the world is a complicated place. And Jonas is no different, even though he lives somewhere which is not like our world at all. So he is. So now we have Jonas's father, who is a nurturer. Okay, to nurture, we learned that word. It means to care for, and he looks after new children, like, which is interesting because it seems that when children are born, they're not brought up with the people who they're born to. They're brought up in a special place. Reminds us of what? Reminds us of kibbutzim, how they once used to be, where all the children were looked after in one place. So his father is he works as a nurturer, which is also interesting that the father is working as a nurturer, not the mother. We usually think about this as a job for a woman, but in this community, people have the job according to their abilities, not according to whether they're male or female. So he's got this little kid who he's taking care of, but he's worrying about him. That he's growing up fast, but he doesn't sleep well, and they have to take extra care with him. And the community are talking about releasing him. And the mother says, "Oh no." And that makes, I know how sad that must make you feel. Again, what is this releasing? It's not such a good thing. So they nod sympathetically, and it said release of new children was always sad because they hadn't had a chance to enjoy life within the community yet, and they hadn't done anything wrong. Okay, so something's going on which isn't so great, but people are accepting it. You've got babies who are sort of released. They're not part of the community anymore because somebody's decided that that's going to be the case. I mean, how does that make you feel? So there were only 2 occasions of release, which were not punishment. Release of the elderly, which was a time of celebration for a life well and fully lived, and release of a new child, which always brought a sense of what we could have done. This was especially troubling for the nurturers, like father, who felt they had failed somehow, but it happened very rarely. Okay, so now we're learning a little bit more about what releasing happens. It's either a punishment, or it happens to people who are old, or it happens to people who are very, very young. So his father's going to keep trying. He's going to ask permission to bring this baby at night, and we're going to see later on this baby has a very important role in the story. Okay, and Lily and Jonas agree that they don't mind having the baby here. And Lily says maybe we could even keep him. And his mother reminds him, you know the rules. 2 children, 1 male, 1 female to each family unit. It's clearly written in the rules. Okay, so then the mother talks about her job as a judge in the Department of Justice, and somebody who had broken the rules. Again, we keep talking about rules all the time. And she feels frustrated. She hasn't been able to make a difference in this person's life. The idea is that they want to teach people how to behave properly, and it's not happening in this case. Okay, and then it's Jonas's turn. and he really doesn't want to talk about his feelings. Doesn't that remind you of being with your parents and them saying, no, no, tell us how you feel? And you're like, I'm growing up here. I don't want to tell you how I feel. Why do I have to talk about my feelings? You feel a bit bad for Jonas. So he tells them he's feeling apprehensive. He's feeling apprehensive about the ceremony of 12. Okay. So, the parents are very happy that he shared his feelings with them. Okay. And now they're going to have a private chat with Jonas without Lily around. So his father pours him a coffee, and he says that in December, the very exciting things are going to happen. And then we go through different ceremonies that they have in the community. They have a ceremony for the one, okay, and they are given their names at the age of 1. The babies are given their names. And then we whatever what are they talking about now? He went to and now we understand that the father broke the rules because he looked at the list, the naming list, to see if this little guy who he's concerned about has made it to the list, and he wanted to see. And Jonas wants to know, well, did you find his name on the list? Because they're worried about the baby being released. And he said, and he saw that his name is to be Gabriel. So he found out his name, and he whispers it to him, and that's also like really against the rules. And but they've decided they like the name. So this is interesting. That we have lots and lots of rules, but not all of them are are stuck to. Okay. And they were remembering when they got Lily, who was new child 23, who was given a name. So this is very interesting. Parents don't give the children the names. The names are given by the community. The babies are given to their family units at the age of 1. People don't get to choose who their babies are. I mean, we don't know how. We're going to find out how these babies come to the world a little bit later on. Okay, and everyone is entitled to 2 children, no more and no less. Okay. So his father is remembering when he was very impatient for the ceremony of 12. The important thing about ceremony of 12 is that at the ceremony of 12, everyone is given their jobs. They're given their careers, basically, what they're going to do in their life, because they're being observed and they're being watched by a committee, and they get to see what they're good at and what they're not good at. So it says here, rules were very hard to change. Sometimes if it was an important rule, unlike the one governing the age for bicycles, it would have to go eventually to the receiver for a decision. Now, the receiver was most important elder. All right, so the rules are decided by a committee, but if there's something where it's a really important rule, that it goes to this person called the receiver. And they don't know who he is. And he lives away from the community. So now we're talking about other ceremonies where his father remembers when his sister became a 9 and removed her hair ribbons and got a bicycle. All right, so let's continue. We understand that it's a secret selection. The committee decide what these kids are going to do. And his father always knew that he would end up being a nurturer. He knew what his aptitude was. Jonas doesn't really know what he's going to be, what he's good at, and what he's going to be chosen to do. Then Jonas asks, in his father's day, were any of the 11 disappointed with the tasks they were given? And his father says, I don't think so. Like, he trusts that the elders are careful in their observations and selections. This is a very interesting question. How much would you trust other people to make your decisions for you, even if you knew that they really, really knew what they were doing? Okay. Would you like other people to decide what job you're going to do? I mean, it makes your life easier in a way, doesn't it? But on the other hand, that means you don't get free choice. So, so his father's remembering his friends and what they were chosen to do. Um, and he says there are very rarely disappointments, Jonas. I don't think you need to worry about that. He's worried about his friend Asher, right? Asher's because who's all over the place and he's late for everything and he's not very organized. Um, so his mother says to him, the elders know Asher, they'll find exactly the right assignment thing. I don't think you have to worry about him. And then she warns him that this is the last ceremony that they're going to have when he's 12. After that, nobody celebrates anything. They don't really celebrate their birthdays or anything like that. And she also tells them that everybody's going to be moving on because everybody's going to be training for their jobs. So he's not going to be with his friends anymore, which is a big deal. And so no more volunteer hours, no more recreation hours, and your friends will no longer be close. And Asher says, no way. No, Jonas says, no way. Asher and I will always be friends. There will still be school. His father agrees, but he says, just watch it. There'll be changes. All right. Okay. So Lily comes and she wants to go to bed. She's a bit annoyed that they had a conversation without her, and that is the end of that. Jonas is still very apprehensive because he doesn't know what his job is going to be.